early years was a Baptist, and she heard the Millerite message. She went and was convicted by it, but actually before that she went to a women's seminary. She was a well-educated person, very creative, bright mind, like her brother. As I said the other day that Uriah Smith was the longtime editor of the Review and Herald. And Annie is known as the premier hymn writer. She wrote some beautiful hymns and poems. You can read about that more and some of them in your book.
There are at least 300.
She met up with none other than, I should say after the Millerite movement, she experienced a disappointment. Both she and Uriah, they were very hurt over that. And I should say it was after that that she went to the seminary in the late 1840s and early 1850. And interestingly, she connected with none other than Joseph Bates. And she learned about the new teaching of the sanctuary from Joseph Bates, and she learned something else from Joseph Bates. What do you think that was?
The Sabbath.
The Sabbath. And so, no, it's not mine. So Joseph Bates was very influential in both the conversion of Annie and Uriah to the Sabbath. And then, of course, they eventually connected with James and Ellen White. Annie worked with, as they became more and more into, after the Sabbath conferences, and they worked their way into the Sabbatarian Adventist. Annie helped edit the Review and Herald, the early years of the Review and Herald for James White. And James White was known as a very exacting editor, a hard boss, and he tended to get on to Annie. And Annie was really good as an editor, but even the best editors make a few mistakes here and there. And James White was quite hard on her. And in fact, there's a poem here about her experience with James. She called it a proofreader's lament. And let me read it to you. This is her poem about the nitpickiness of James White as her editor. What news is this falls on my ear? What next will to my sight appear? My brain doth whirl, my heart doth quake. Oh, that egregious mistake. Too bad, I hear them cry. You might have seen with half an eye. Strange, passing, strange. How could you make so plain, so blunderous a mistake? Guilty, condemned, I trembling stand, with pressing cares in every hand. This satire here, of course. She's not obsessed about it, but she's just not happy. She's venting here. She's venting in this poem. She's frustrated with her boss. With pressing cares in every hand, without one single plea to make for leaving such a bad mistake. If right, no reward of praise is won, no more than duty then is done. If wrong, then censure I partake, deserving such a gross mistake. How long shall I o'er this bewail? The best is said will sometimes fail. Must it then peace forever break? Summed up, it's only a mistake. So she was venting her frustrations about James's nitpickiness over tiny little mistakes. But she was a bright and creative mind. And she fell in love, and a big crush, you might say, on none other than J. N. Andrews. But alas, J. N. Andrews fell in love with somebody else. So Annie never got her true love. And unfortunately, she died of tuberculosis before she could make a profound contribution to the then developing and eventually Seventh-day Adventist Church. I often wonder, with her creative genius that she lived on, what contribution she would have made to the church. So that's in a nutshell about Annie.